Thanks so much, guys, for attending. So many of you new online. This is awesome. And big ups to AJ for his presentation just then. That was cool. What a legend. So my name's Sean. Let's get straight into it. So before I begin today, I'd like to acknowledge that I am speaking to you today on the traditional lands of the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation. I was born and raised here. I still work here, so I pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging, and I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. So who am I? My name's Sean. I am a lot of things. I've done a lot of things in my life. But in a nutshell, I consider myself to be a creative that works in the ethical and environmental space. I'm deeply passionate about helping purpose-driven organisations make a massive impact and create strong connections with consciously minded audiences. I've worked on a few great projects over the years that I'm proud of, but nothing comes quite close to the campaign that I'll be sharing with you today. I just want to ask a question. If you set out to change the world for the better, how would you do it? How could you test your idea to know if it was any good? What tools would you use, and what kind of people would you need along the way to help you get there? Well, today I'll be showcasing a little idea that grew into something incredible. It's essentially like a non-commercial application for Webflow, and how I reckon it's the ultimate platform for rapidly building community-driven websites within a ridiculous deadline. And I'll be showing you the tools we used, the people involved, and then the process that we use to try and change the world. So the little idea we had happened late last year in September. I was involved in an internationally recognised climate action campaign called Not Business as Usual. So my talk today will cover the purpose of the campaign, why we did it, how we did it, and then at the end, I'll be sharing some tips and tricks, and hopefully then you can apply this yourself if you ever have a little idea that you want to chase. I'm always really motivated by the why of anything, and that's what strategy is all about. So I'm going to kick this off with some pretty big purpose statements. Here are a few business leaders sharing their reasons for joining our little humble campaign, and it'll give you a solid idea of the why behind Not Business as Usual. And let's see if it plays.
Hi, I'm Matt Rowley, CEO of the Pedestrian Group, Australia's largest youth publisher. And we're not only just going to be covering the climate strike on Friday, but we're going to be allowing our employees to join it as well if they so wish. And that's because we believe we've got a whole generation of readers who are being sold short. They're being sold short not just by a complete lack of conscience with regards to what's clearly a global environmental disaster that's unfolding around us, but they're also being sold short by a complete lack of vision, a lack of vision to how Australia could actually lead the world into a much brighter future with a renewables-based economy, something for us all to look forward to, but something that's not being made happen right now.
In solidarity with students and hundreds of thousands of others around the world, on September 20, we're going to take to the streets to demand immediate climate action. We'll close pickup offices and set a call to governments and businesses to set strong climate agendas that quickly transition us from the old fossil fuel economy to 100% renewables. This is a call for a biodiverse future.
I'm James Meldrum, co-founder of Whole Kids Organic Snack Foods. As a dad of 2 young children and a business owner, I feel it's critical to support Climate Strike this Friday. We need to stand up and support the next generation in their urgent call for action on climate change, as delaying action will only cost our children their future. The climate is changing. Why aren't we? We must act now.
Lara Kennedy, Account Director from Quip here. At Quip, we believe companies can impact positive change in the world. That's why we're supporting our team to strike on Friday the 20th of September for the global climate strike. Quip signed the Not Business as Usual pledge along with hundreds of other organisations because this is not business as usual. Students shouldn't have to fight this hard to be heard on an issue that will impact them long after our current politicians and CEOs are gone.
Hi, this is Oliver Pelling, and I'm the Australia editor for Adventure.com. And it's not business as usual for us because we can't bury our heads in the sand anymore. The climate crisis isn't just on our doorstep, it's in the lounge with its bloody feet up. It's about to help itself to our fancy biscuits. Yeah, it's scary and complicated, and we're going to have to make some changes, but we don't have to have all the answers now. We just have to commit to finding them because it's time for something new. And that's why for Adventure.com and our global network of writers and photographers and creative people, it's not business as usual.
Hey, I'm Lee Barnes. I'm the Chief Purpose Officer at Intrepid Travel. We are at a pivotal moment in time. Taking definitive action to fight the climate crisis is critical. Children around the world have been leading the way through the climate strike movement. And now is the time for adults and business leaders to stand up and support the call for immediate action. At Intrepid, we believe that we have a particular responsibility to take action because flying is a big contributor to emissions, and we want to ensure we're doing everything we can to mitigate our impact. As a B Corp business, we stand in solidarity to support the next generation as they demand climate action. It's real, it's happening, and it's time for global business leaders to do their part. The bigger the turnout, the more change we can make.
Okay, so you'd probably agree after hearing those statements that it's not business as usual for the world's children to skip school to get adults to start paying attention to the climate crisis. And it's not business as usual for those children to have to ask adults and parents and workers to skip work to join them. And then it's absolutely not business as usual for citizens and workers around the world to strike so that their governments will make meaningful commitments to climate change. So at the end of the campaign, on the 27th of September 2019, we didn't do business as usual. Now, bit of stats here, 84% of Aussies are in favour of action on climate change, at least some action on climate change. So it's not just the school kids who are concerned about this as a rising threat. However, it became apparent to us in the lead up to this strike that there was something in the way of workers joining in. And we quickly identified that the sole hurdle stopping people from physically showing up was simply just their work commitments. The reality is that no one really expects the private sector to lead on climate action. Everyone just says stick to what you know. But why not? And we already knew that some companies already wanted to play a part. They just needed a push or an incentive or something that they could get around. So with this problem in mind, we set about working on a solution. We asked ourselves, what can we do to encourage workers to get involved in this? How can we break down those barriers? So we laid out some really simple options. You can close your doors, you can have a meeting-free day, allow a long lunch to coincide with a march, you can give your staff paid time off, or you can set out like an email blast to all staff to make it clear that no one will be penalised if they take time off to go to the strike. And so with that in mind, we then launched Not Business as Usual on the 3rd of September with a mere 14 companies pledging to be part of our Humble Alliance. We wanted to achieve big things with this, and it was super early days, but we were hopeful and we pushed on with it. And then over the next 2 weeks, the word started to get out and businesses agreed to participate. From local cafes to global multinational companies, the list started to grow. And it grew and continued to grow until we'd reached an unstoppable momentum. Over just 2 weeks, 3,156 businesses and charities from around the world had pledged to join the Not Business as Usual Alliance. Atlassian, Keep Cup, Camp America, Ben & Jerry's, Canva, Amnesty International, Slater and Gordon, Invato, Domain, The Iconic, the list goes on and on. Each organisation had made a clear public pledge to allow their workers to get involved in the climate march without penalty. So then inevitably, workers from around the world walked off their job and joined the march. And when these workers joined the school strikers, numbers swelled to an estimated 7.6 million people marching in support of climate action around the globe, which is unbelievable numbers. United across time zones and cultures, these rallies were the largest climate protests in history. I'm sure some people on today even joined in. Not business as usual was then reported in media all over the planet, from the NBC, the Guardian, to the Huffington Post, the ABC, both in America and Australia, just to name a select few. So it was huge. And now you're probably wondering, okay, so how did we achieve all this stuff? What went into creating such a large-scale campaign? Why was it successful? And I'll go into that in just a minute. So at the time, we were a very small, humble team. We were wearing multiple hats at all times, heavily relying on external help from freelancers and a PR firm. As you can see on the side of the team, we've got design, which I was part of, copywriting, we had a PR firm, a community organizer, social media coordinator, and then a bunch of freelancers. And the tech stack, which I'll go into a second, was pretty straightforward, and then some collateral. So despite this being an enormous public undertaking, the tech stack behind it was so straightforward. The no-code movement allowed us to connect a whole bunch of platforms together in an incredibly simple way. So what we started with was Webflow to rapidly build out the website and any interactions and animations. And then we used it also to build our pledge form. We then used Zapier to pull the data from that pledge form and then send it onto Google Sheets. Google Sheets to filter and sort all the pledged businesses into various categories. And then we used Gmail to send out confirmation emails and content for all the businesses to share online and promote the whole thing. The final piece of the puzzle was getting assistance from a team of freelancers to edit all the logos and then upload them to Webflow CMS. So, I mean, the icons are all pretty straightforward there, and it literally was as simple as that. Sure, there was a ton of data, but if you talk about it structurally, it was bang, 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 just like this you see on the screen. So let's get stuck into Webflow to start off with. I've been using this since, I think, 2015. I've been using it for years. I absolutely love it. I've built so many things so quickly with it, and it essentially got me into web design. It taught me most of what I know about code, which is crazy because you don't really use code. So there are like so many ways to design the same things when it comes to web design, but this is my basic approach for this particular site. So if you look on the page here, you've got a couple of screenshots. Design-wise, the Not Business as Usual site is incredibly simple. We had a really strong narrative, great copywriting that was delivering a unique, novel concept. So we felt it was super important that the design didn't get in the way of that. We wanted to create like an editorial sense of gravitas. So a dark navy and beige color palette, along with like a serif typeface, seemed fairly appropriate to deliver this. And jump on there if you want to have a look, and I'll have the link at the end of this. So considering that with the design sort of strategy in place of stripped back and simple and to the point, and we had all these logos, right? So since all the businesses involved were joining forces in a united front, it seemed only right that their logos were on the same level. Competing colors seemed at odds with this, so I made a decision to desaturate all the logos, matching the color palette. If I was going for like a simple black and white effect, I could have easily achieved this with Webflow CSS filters, but you know, we didn't go down that route, so we required a bunch of time and effort in Photoshop. So I've always personally believed that a good logo will work just as well in black and white as it does in color. And this exercise certainly proved that point. There were quite a few that just didn't translate and didn't make the cut. So lesson learned there. So if we talk about the structure of the site, we're inside Webflow now. The first thing I typically set up is like a default section class. This is just to wrap everything up in nice digestible blocks of content. I personally use percentages for my internal padding, so I don't have to worry so much about changing values for every single breakpoint. And that's that green padding you can see there on the screen. I mean, in these screenshots, you can sort of see that 8% padding, if it works well on a desktop, it'll certainly look just as good on a tablet and a smartphone at 8%. It's not foolproof, but it is a really neat little trick that I suggest using if you've got some quick stuff you need to get out there. It'll drastically cut down the time you spend designing for each breakpoint. No need to do 50 pixels here, 20 pixels there. It's a really good set and forget. The next thing I would do is I would set up a container div, making sure all the content within is nice and snug and uniform. This is for the container would wrap up all of those logos that you were seeing before. For this, I've chosen a max width of 940 pixels, which is like a kind of a standard, so that on big screens, it won't extend all the way across. Max width is a really good choice because it sets it at this point and it can collapse, but it won't extend further past that. Now, I want all of the written text on the page to be super legible. And one really important aspect of legibility is words per line. You might see there's a lot of websites out there that they just have sentences that go right across, and it's really hard to read them. So to reduce the amount of words per line in each paragraph, I've added an extra container element inside that previous one, specifically for the written content with a maximum width of I think it's 660 pixels. Again, max width because it'll collapse down nicely. There is another way to control text width, but I didn't have access to it at the time. Webflow's just recently added a new text size unit called CH. And the CH unit lets you limit the width of text elements by the character count. So what you can see here is you've got paragraph style and you've got 50 CH. So that's 50 characters wide. And that would have been a really cool addition if I'd had access to it. Additionally, this is at 20 characters wide. So it's a really great addition to your web typography. If you, so give it a shot, see what happens. I'm going to keep talking about typography. I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to this stuff. I've spent years fixating on responsive typography, coming from like a classic print sort of background, making sure everything is super, balanced and there's no ragged edges. So I've tried to work out the simplest approach, and I think I've found it. I never use pixels anymore. Instead, I use EM units or sometimes REM. Pretty much for all my web typography. And the reason why is because it's incredibly easy to adjust all your text sizes and padding and whatever else you've applied it to globally just by using the body tag. So on the desktop, you can say 1 EM. On tablet, you can say 0.9 EM, and that'll just shift it slightly down. And you can sort of do that. If you've set it perfectly for your desktop, you can then incrementally reduce it down, which is really cool. If you jump in the Q&A section after this, I'll happily share more info on how this works. And I've got a responsive web typography template that you can clone. It'll save you hours, and it saved me hours, and I think it's something that I'd love to share. If you have seen the Not Business as Usual site prior to this, you will notice there is a ton of CMS data on this page. And by Webflow standards, there's too much. But luckily, it is robust enough to handle it. It did get to a certain point, we had to make some decisions, but after a while, you got the gist of however many people were on this. So I didn't include all 3,000 logos because I pretty much just couldn't. So if you've also used the Webflow CMS before, you'll also notice it has like a limit of 100 collection items per page. And on the screen here, we've got a bunch of logos, and each one of those logos is a collection item. If you've done like a blog post collection and you're a very prolific writer, you might have come up against the 100 limit. But I've figured out a workaround for this. So once all the pledges had surpassed 100, I essentially duplicated my first collection list and then set it to start at 101 and limit to 99, and then start at 200, 299, 300, and so on and so on. And then I did that another 17 times, which is probably a little too much, as I said. So here we have the pledge form at the very end of the page. The form is incredibly straightforward, as it should be for good UX. You want people to fill stuff out. You don't want to get in the way. I absolutely love Webflow's form management. It is so simple, it's so intuitive, and it's not an additional plugin you need to buy. If you've got an external email database CRM thingy, you just put a code in, post to, and it usually just works. So anyway, once someone has filled out this form, Webflow would then push the data straight over to Zapier. And I'll show you that in a sec. I'm not going to go into too much detail with Zapier. AJ's talk before went into far more detail than I could wrap my head around. That was great. But for this project, it was super straightforward. The UX of this is really great, and it'll work just step by step. And they've spent a lot of time making sure that it is good UX. I will say that there's a hot tip. Before creating a Zap, always make sure you've got something on either end for data to be pulled from and go to. So for us, the site was done, the form was done, and we had a Google Sheet ready to go with all the columns set up. Otherwise, retrofitting it is just a nightmare. This is a replica of the type of data we would end up with. It's dummy data, so don't worry about that. All the form data would be set by Zapier straight into its respective columns. We've added an extra couple of columns there for housekeeping. So after we received each pledge, it was have we reached out to them via email, have we confirmed their pledge, have we sent them some assets for them to then share it online, and have we uploaded their logo to the website. Very simple project management little tool. With the collateral that I created, just like the rest of the campaign, it was super stripped back, straight to the point. We let the message do the talking. I created the assets so they could be personalized. As you can see in the Instagram story there, we've got a lot of space for someone to add whatever text in, or images or stickers or whatever they wanted to do. Many businesses even opted to use our copy with their own brand identity, which was super cool. And it ultimately meant that the campaign felt to some that they had a shared ownership around it. It was a decision that they had made, and they were owning it, which is cool. So then on the actual day of the strike, we had some standout coverage all over the web. And here are some choice cuts from that. We've got Al Gore, Mike Cannon-Brookes having a chat on Twitter. We've got Redbubble out there on the streets. We've got Zali Steggall sharing this front page, this one-page article on the whole campaign. And we even had Greta Thunberg come in there and share our stuff. So it was monumental. It was crazy. We're all shook at the end of this. Here are some pledges that came through on the site. So we've got one from Ben & Jerry's. We're closing the doors of our 35 shops in Australia in solidarity with the youth, and so our staff can participate in strike events. We're also closing shops in the United States and Europe. Our Ben & Jerry's corporate offices around the world will also close during the strike to allow corporate staff to attend events. Pretty big stuff. Bank Australia's pledge. Staff are supported to join the strike actions around the country, and members of our executive team will also be joining the strike. Canva, we're not hosting our usual all hands at that time to allow people to go. We'll also be supplying our staff with custom design posters to use and distribute at the event. Pretty big businesses doing some pretty big stuff. I'll wrap my talk up today with some inspirational guidance and some of the things I learned along the way. Number one is simple ideas can equal big changes. If you have an idea that you think is worth it, go for it. Give it a shot. That's what we did, and look what happened. You never know. There are people out there like you who share your interests, your values, your courage. So Don't get worried about it. If you've got an idea, go for it. My second point is always put purpose first. Think strategically about anything you do. As you can see in some of the examples with the design decisions, we made some strategies to say the message is what's important. That people understand what they're getting into, what they're pledging to. We held back on some overcooking of the designs and some typography decisions and color decisions or lack thereof. And that was putting purpose first. So I would highly recommend following Mark Pollard or Jim Antonopoulos, two guys who share wonderful strategy tips on Instagram and Twitter and stuff. I'm currently in a couple of their strategy workshops, which is super cool. Number 3, network with freelancers. Don't give up when the going gets tough. Don't do everything yourself. Network with freelancers and don't go it alone. Like, it's, again, you've got a simple idea, you don't have enough people, get some people. You know, there are people out there that will help you. And we had to rely on a ton of people to get out what we did. Number 4, keep it simple. Always resist the urge to overcook things. Sometimes you've got to step back and go, okay, are we done? Or am I just like touching up little bits? Sometimes you have to get out of your own way and say, this is exactly what it needs to be. And lastly, use Webflow. It's a no-brainer. It's such a good web platform and the people behind it are so good. Support is incredible. And the stuff you can do with it is basically limitless from what I can tell. To see more, visit notbusinessusual.co and you can see how many logos are put in there. Go easy. You can find me on most social platforms with the handle Seán Marsh Design. I'm always up for a chinwag, so please reach out to me. Now, go out there and change the world. Thank you so much.